she going to be preparing for 6 more weeks of summer. And joke's on you, I'm always preparing for 6 more weeks of summer because it's extremely hot here. It's hot all the time. I'm not trying to complain. It rained today, so now the air is, how you say, it's that got that je ne sais quoi. It's very thick. It's really thick and humid, and I mean, it could be worse. It absolutely could be worse. But listen, that's my shtick. That's my complaint about the weather. Y'all, this is my favorite part. One of my favorite parts about having a show here on the Guadalupe Radio Network is I get to have such incredible guests on the show. I get the opportunity to have such amazing conversations with people about their life experiences, about their areas of expertise, and I'm going to give you full disclosure. Sometimes I get to invite my friends. I get to invite some of my friends who also have a lot of life experience and certain areas of study or expertise, and I have a recurring guest. It's not his first time on the show today. In the studio with me, Mauricio Romero. Mauricio is kind of I've never met anybody like Mauricio. He's he's a good friend, and I really love his family, and we've worked together in the past, and now we're finally living in the same city, and I get to see more of him than I ever thought I would. And it's great. It's a great joy. But today I've invited Mauricio to come on the show, and I call him Mao, so you may hear me say Mao for short. But I like all the variations of people trying to pronounce it. He's Mexican. He's a Mexican, you might say. True Mexican. A true Mexican, as in born. Well, no. We won't go there. True. I don't know what his definition of true Mexican is, but it's definitely not something he perceives me to be, regardless of my last name and ability to tan. So I invited Mauricio on the show today because of an article that we both came across that went viral recently. Mauricio, welcome back to the show. It's good to have you on.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, it's if you've heard Mal on the show before, if you heard Mauricio come on, you may recall that he has been married for over 20 years and has 6 daughters. You heard me. 6 daughters, all about 2 years apart. One right on the cusp of adulthood, and the other very. I know. It's weird to. He was like, "Are you sure?" Yes, I'm sure. And the other one is about to be 6.
Yeah, somewhere between 5 and 17, and everything in between.
Yeah, and so I've had a great joy watching Mauricio and his wonderful wife walk with and journey with their kids, their daughters, for a few years, and I defer to them a lot. When it comes to, I'm a new parent, right? I'm a newer mom. My son's not even 2 yet. And I defer to them for a lot of different things, but especially parenting. It's not just that it's not the reality that they've been married for the amount of time and have the amount of children that they do. Because they could have 1 child or they could have 62 children. It's that all of their children seem to like them. And I think that's one of the driving factors for me and why I invited Mauricio on the show today. We saw an article recently about parents who anonymously submitted basically stories about how they regret becoming parents. Stories about parents wishing that their children had never been born, they had never met their spouse, their partner, and that children have destroyed their life, their independence, and and everything in between. And so obviously this, as parents, I can't speak directly for Mauricio, but it made me sick to think that that parents were regretting having children, and it's quite sad. I think someday, if my son ever comes across any of the episodes request, which I'm sure he will, because I will force him to listen. If he ever comes across any episodes of the Quest, I want, anytime that I refer to him or anytime that I've talked about him, I want him to be happy and proud when he hears the way I speak about him and the way that I love him. I never want him to feel like he's a burden because I don't get to pack up a backpack and fly to France for the weekend, because that's not something a lot of parents do or typically can do. And so, that being said, that article was so sad to listen to or to read, and so I have Mauricio on the show basically today to talk about, to have a conversation and ask him some questions about how we as Catholics need to, are called to, are required to parent with both authority and love. To parent with authority, but to also do so with great love and mercy. It's. I think in pondering and preparing for today's show, I was thinking, if I was really harsh to my child and I was very aggressive towards him and I was merciless when he made mistakes, when he makes mistakes in the future, but I expected our Lord, when I see him face to face, to be very merciful with me, it wouldn't really make sense. And so, that being said, on today's show, I think I'll be, I hope to inspire you, if you're parents, to be better parents. If you're aspiring parents, I hope to help you build a great desire to iron out some of the many wrinkles all of us have, so that you are better prepared when the Lord blesses you with children. And yeah, that's my goal overall. And it's not to make anyone feel horrible about the way they've raised their children or to trash talk anyone. Rather, it's to parent in the way that our Lord desires us to. That's ultimately what the goal is. And so, without further ado, how would you, Mauricio, how would you summarize? We'll start with a summary and then we can go from there. How would you summarize what it means to parent with both authority and with great love?
Well, let's start with this, okay? So the first thing that we have to say is that there's no knowing how to be a parent, okay? Does that make sense? So, we don't know. The reality is that we have to start with, it's like whenever you have your first kid, you can read the books, you can hear the advice, and you can do all the research that you want to do, but you're still not gonna know. And so the first thing is just to come with an understanding that you are going to fail, and you're going to fail repeatedly. So if you start with that, then I think, and this is not to excuse yourself, right? This is not so that you can say it's well, we're all gonna fail, we're all broken, we're all sinful, all those things. So then it's so then you kind of start going willy-nilly, doing whatever you want. So so this is not it. So it's just coming from an understanding that we are broken and we will make mistakes. Now, having said that, after you make mistakes, you do have to realize that if you're making the mistakes, you don't want to repeat them. Okay? So if you really wanna parent your kids from a place of love, you have to continuously be checking what works and what doesn't work. So I guess it's what the gospel says, right? The commandments, love your neighbor as you love yourself.
Mm.
So you have to learn to love yourself. So you have to continuously be striving for holiness, continuously be striving to come out of your brokenness, come out of your sinfulness, so that then you can, by you coming out of your sinfulness, then you can start by improving yourself. Inevitably, your parenting will improve. Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah, that makes perfect sense. There's a big push, especially in social media, that I've seen for a movement a movement called gentle parenting. Gentle parenting, or I've heard it called, respect. Sorry, I'm gonna get it wrong. But basically, gentle parenting. Not, and people confuse it, I think, with letting your kid do whatever they want. But I don't. That's not what it is. Gentle parenting is more like kind of, from what I understand. Like I'm gonna give an example of someone that I heard once that they were baking something, and the kids started to have a meltdown when they saw some of the ingredients were being poured in, and instead of like go to your room, be quiet, they were like, "Are you sad that I poured this in here and you wanted some?" And getting to the root of stuff, and the kid's like, "Yeah, I really wanted it." Well, they don't have the tools to do that. They're so little. But we can unpack that in a second, but I'm very curious to know what you think about gentle parenting. You're listening to The Quest here. I'm your Monday, Thursday host, Sarah Soto. We'll be right back after a very short break.
The month of September is dedicated to the Sorrowful Mother. O most holy Virgin Mother of our Lord Jesus Christ, by the overwhelming grief you experience when you witness the martyrdom, the crucifixion and death of your divine Son, look upon me with eyes of compassion and awaken in my heart a tender commiseration for those sufferings, as well as a sincere detestation of my sins, in order that, being disengaged with all undue affection for the passing joys of this earth, I may sigh after the eternal Jerusalem, and that henceforth all my thoughts, all my actions may be directed towards this one most desirable object: honor, glory, and love to our divine Lord Jesus, and to the holy and immaculate Mother of God. Amen. Welcome back to The Quest, an extraordinary journey where every step brings us closer to discovering God's love for us. Want to join the conversation? Give us a call at 877-757-9424.
Hey y'all, welcome back to The Quest. I'm your Monday, Thursday host, Sarah Soto. It's such a great joy to be here with you all. We're on every Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Eastern. You can listen on the Guadalupe Radio Network app, which just continues to get better and better every day. We're making great strides and great improvements to that bad boy. Download it from where you download your apps, or you can stream online from grnonline.com or anywhere, basically where you stream anything. In the studio today, I have Mauricio Romero. He is a father of 6 daughters, and he's a good friend. He has a master's degree in theology, sure, but his parenting is he has a lot of experience, in stuff. But I really admire he and his wife's style of parenting, because it. And I'll tell you the perfect example, and then I'll ask him the question I did before our break here. One of his daughters helps out to sort of nanny my son when I'm getting things done around the house every now and then. And I forgot why she and I were talking about this, but she essentially said she had seen some other kids and their relationships with their parents. And sort of in processing all of it, she said, and she's 15. She said, I think my parents did a really good job. I think they've done a really good job with me and with my sisters. And I'm thinking, I don't think there's another 15-year-old on the planet that would compliment their parents' parenting and say how good of a job they thought they did, and how much they like their parents and how much they like being around them, and they prefer to be around them. Didn't you say, Mauricio, the other day, or I think it was the other day, you said that you have to kick them out of your room in the evenings?
Yeah. Honestly, I'm just glad somebody likes me. At least there are 7 people that like me in this world. Outside of that, I'm not so sure. But But yeah, no, it's and you know what? It's reciprocal. Like I love being with my kids. I'm you know I'm out working all day, and I know that a lot of parents after they're outside of work, they get out of work, they wanna go somewhere else, not home. I love going home. I love being with my kids. There's no place that I'd rather be than with my wife and my kids. And I think it's just that I'm sure that that's something that they can sense. You know what I mean? So it's just interesting because my ever since they were born, and it's like, yeah, no, I have my kids are pretty chilled or whatever. Over and over again, I kept hearing, it's like, oh, you just wait till they're teens, you just wait till they're teens, and then they're gonna start rebelling. It's like, well, I have 3 teens already, and it hasn't happened. And they seem to enjoy time with us and everything. And to be honest, like, obviously it's by the grace of God, but one of the things that again, going back to what I was saying before, it's just being willing to admit that you're wrong, and being willing to say, it's like, hey, I know I've been trying this, and I know I read this in this book, and and I tried it, and it just doesn't seem to be working, and be willing to pivot. Sometimes we get so hung up about like the choices that we made in the past. So like, and that even though we see that it's not working, we keep on doing the same thing, because, hey, guess what? Maybe I told the whole world that it's like, hey, I'm doing this parenting thing. And honestly, like, we've tried everything. So we tried gentle parenting. We've tried, we tried, like, in the beginning, like in the whole like kind of Mexican thing where you're a little bit rougher, I guess. Like, that didn't work. And I mean rough, like rougher as in like the chancla kind of thing, where they like. And even though we never threw a chancla at them.
It was chancla style.
It was chancla style, just like a little bit just, where you like get upset and then you scream and everything, and it just, well, that didn't work then. That was the beginning. And that's obviously you get frustrated because you don't know what you're doing. And I really want to stress the fact that it's like, when you don't know what you're doing, you're gonna get frustrated. So the best way for you to become unfrustrated is to learn what works and what doesn't work, right? So, and that's just, at least in our experience, has been a lot of trial and error, and a lot of like moving from our personal preferences to following sort of the model that God has with the people of Israel, right? Yeah. He created us out of love, and because of sin, we break away from Him, and this happens with your kids. Let me just pop the bubble. Your kids are not perfect. They cannot be perfect because they're human. Unless you beget Our Lady, your kids are not perfect.
He means with the exception of my son.
Sure. So if they're
going to do anything wrong.
Yeah, I know, right? It's like kids will never do anything wrong. And now that doesn't mean that when they're born, like they're evil or whatever. It's just like they're gonna make mistakes. Obviously, like on concupiscence, we have an inclination to bad things, and kids are gonna have it. And even if they don't do it within reason, right? Like in the age of reason, right? Like before 7 or whatever, they're not gonna do it maliciously, but they will do things out of ignorance, and they will do things out of passion. And so, as parents, like, if we wanna educate our kids, if we wanna raise them with good moral values, and then we gotta teach them the same way that God did with the people of Israel. It's like, yeah, a lot of punishment, a lot of like, putting them in the corner, kind of like separating themselves from the family, kind of thing. Because that's, if you really look at it, God is obviously a great parent. So if it worked for God, then it should work for us. But we just wanna jump all the way to the after the resurrection and skip the cross and skip the whole like teaching process from the Old Testament. And it just doesn't work like that. It just does not work like that.
You got to put in the work, and that's what I think a lot of parents are. Well, I see. I mean, being the parent of a toddler, I can see I am tempted to take an easier path. I am tempted to, at times, to give him just whatever he wants. Like, just as long as the crying stops, If it stops, if the whining or whatever it is, right? Call it whatever you want. If the fussing stops, or if they, like, I'm so tempted to be like, here, give him this. Here, hey, you want a strawberry? You like strawberries? Because it is, like you said, you're totally right. If you don't know what you're doing, it's frustrating. I get frustrated almost every day, not at him or for lack of love towards him or anything like that, but because I don't know what I'm doing and I'm figuring it out. I want to circle back to something you said when we first got back from the break. You said that you like your kids, you really like them, you like to be around them. What do you think when parents don't like to be around their kids? We just had a conversation about this. When your kid's not, there's no other way to say it, when your kid is kind of unenjoyable to to be around, when your kid is a source of great frustration and annoyance, and they're just really unbearable or maybe awful. Why do you think that is?
Okay, so I'll tell you a quick story about that. So when my second daughter was about 3 or 4, I remember I was laying in bed in the morning, like it was a Saturday morning, so it was my day off, and she kept coming into the room and asking me for water. It's like, Dad, can I have some water? And I kept saying, it's like, in a minute. And it's like, I continue to be like in bed, and then she came back later, and it's like, hey, Dad, can I have some water? And then I was just like, hold on, I'll be there. And then so she did like this like 3-4 times, and the funny thing is that like that same thing was the one thing that really upset me that she did. Like, you would ask her anything, and she would be like, okay, yeah, in a minute, and then she wouldn't do it. So it's like, pick up your toys, like, okay, yeah, in a minute. So then eventually, like that morning, whenever she did that, I just realized that he's like, hey, guess what? Like, if my kids are doing like things that annoy me, it's probably because they learned it from me or from my wife. Now we can hide ourselves with like, well, but my kids go to public school or they go to the daycare or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But you're still the parent. So I think if your kid's annoying, if your kid is annoying, is because you allowed it to get there. Kids are not born annoying, okay? So we make them annoying, or we allow them to be annoying. Yeah. And the thing is like going back a little bit back to the whole gentle parenting thing. It's just like the whole gentle parenting thing. It's just like it's for the parent, okay? It's not for the kid. Because kids like structure. It's like, setting those boundaries and everything. They like the fact that that they can have that they can rely on because he's firm. Like, he's not gonna be moved by your tears. And I know that sounds bad and whatever. It's like, but if my kids cry, like my wife tells me all the time, it's like, aren't you moved? I was like, no, I got feelings. I can feel something, but it's like if I do not, if they do not see emotional stability from me, they're not gonna learn it anywhere. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it's just realize that if your kids are a pain, if they're annoying, it's because we've been failing as parents. Now, and let me just reiterate and let me reassure you, we've all been there. We've all been there. The only difference of those that have kids that stop being annoying at some point is that they had a deep desire to love their kids, so that to the point where they would grow to have possession and self-knowledge, like the Catechism says.
That's the dream, isn't it? I mean, for Catholic parents, it's the dream for our kids to be, just kind of doing what the Catechism says in general. But you mentioned earlier that you tried and failed, right? Different parenting styles throughout the years, and you've been a parent for, 18-ish years. And you have, so you said you tried out like a more gentle parenting style, and you've tried out what we refer to as a chancla style. If those of you who are listening are not familiar with what a chancla style of parenting is, chancla is how you say sandal, or like a house shoe, sort of like a huarache. Like, I don't know. It's like a house sandal, right? So, and some of you may better know that as like a slipper, right? Ugh. And anyway, and so there is a method of parenting that I do not advocate for and do not agree with, and that is as your brain is thinking about doing something irresponsible, a faster than the speed of light, there is a catapulting chancla coming in your direction to parent you into the right direction. But I don't advocate for that. So Mauricio was saying he was trying, he tried everything from a gentle parenting style to a more, chancla-based parenting style. So we're going to take a break here in a second. But what I'm curious to know is can you sort of break it down after the break for our listeners? What's the middle then? If it's not, okay, honey, sit down and tell me your feelings and why. Why did you put whiteout all over mommy's work report? Why did you empty your diaper in dad's shoes? Like, what was the emotion behind that decision, versus the come here, you little, and like taking out and screaming and taking out all this aggression and not being able to, curb your emotions and so there has to be a middle. And I think, like the title of today's show, that's parenting with authority and with love. So I'll ask you for some examples, but kind of if you can help us, like you said, it's you, right? It's you that you're working on. And as you become more refined, as you become more Christ-like, you'll find that your parenting improves. But what are some practical things? And we'll get to that after a short break. You're listening to The Quest. I'm a Catholic wife, mom, and speaker. For more information, to contact us, you can always shoot us a message at thequest@grnonline.com. Listen, folks, we love that you listen. We love that you tune in. We're here Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Eastern. We'll be back after a quick break.
This is Life News Radio. I'm Jim Anderson. 2 Georgia deaths are now attributed to chemical abortion. One review of the record shows that doctors failed meeting the standard of care as many as 6 times before Amber Thurman died. 41-year-old Candy Miller ordered abortion pills online under Biden FDA protocol and suffered for days before dying. Abortion drugs send 1 in 25 women to the emergency room. Nebraska voters in November will either make permanent the state's current 12-week abortion ban in the state constitution or enshrine a right to abortion through all 9 months of pregnancy. Nebraska is the first state to have competing abortion amendments on the same ballot. And Thomas More Society attorneys are back before the U.S. Supreme Court, once again seeking an end to New York compelling nuns to fund employee abortions. This is Life News Radio.
Persecution around the world has manifested itself through the centuries, but it is worse today than ever before. Aid to the Church in Need and its donors have been there to help since 1947, never abandoning the Church or her most vulnerable children. Will you stand up for your faith and accompany our brothers and sisters on their spiritual journey? Visit churchinneed.org. churchinneed.org.
In the 1960s, Cecil Moore of the NAACP said Planned Parenthood's plan for America was replete with everything to help the Negroes commit race suicide. Today, Pastor Walter Hoy may be the preeminent voice on the systemic decimation of the black community by contraception and abortion. His op-ed at Life News perhaps tells why abortion-friendly candidates in November elections are losing more and more of the black vote. For pro-life headlines delivered to your email address daily, sign up at lifenews.com. This has been Life News Radio.
You're listening to The Quest, a pilgrimage of faith. Have a question or something to share? Call the show live at 877-757-9424.
Hey y'all, hey y'all, welcome back to The Quest. I'm your Monday, Thursday host, Sarah Soto. It's so good to be with you guys. Today we're talking about parenting with love and authority, not just one or the other, with my friend here in the studio, Mauricio Romero, and we're talking about finding that balance between two very extreme forms of parenting, which is the sort of permissive parenting of, kind of the 4-year-olds running the house style parenting versus the authoritative, like the children cannot speak. So somewhere in the middle is where we find a balance as Catholic, as Christian parents. And so Mauricio says he's an actual bona fide Mexican. I guess I have to call myself Hispanic for him to for him to be able to sleep at night. But we both were exposed to what we were called, if you're just tuning in, it's a chancla parenting. So there is like a flying house shoe coming your way. It's not specific to our culture. There's other, I'm sure in Poland they have a flying Polish house shoe of some kind. Long story short, there's a balance, and I have to say, or I have to wonder, with all your girls being they seem so self-possessed. I mean, they seem like they want to be virtuous out of love for God, out of love for you, out of love for their parents. And so, as someone who did not want to be virtuous out of love for my parents when I was their age, but as someone who got the more extreme chancla style parenting, what's the middle ground for us Catholic Christians? Like I said earlier, you growing in virtue is what makes you a better parent all around. But what are some real examples of finding that true balance of parenting with love and authority? What does that really look like?
Yeah, we'll start with I am in the process of figuring it out, so I'm not gonna pretend that that I have it all figured out. But going back to something that I mentioned earlier, there is a process or a journey that our kids go through just like we do. So really grabbing the pedagogy of God, or pedagogy of God, however you want to say it, 'cause I heard it both ways. Just looking at the way that he was forming the people of Israel, and then eventually, he was preparing them for the fullness of revelation in Christ, and then eventually to live that inside of the church with the full teaching. It's something that our kids go through as well. Like, it's in the beginning they just don't know, so then they have to know, and a lot of the times it's just gonna be just like you're going through a trial and error period as a parent, your kids are going to go through that as well. So they're going to be testing boundaries and everything. And it is up to you as a dad, as a mom, to set those boundaries. And now then the question becomes is how do you set those boundaries, right? Like I said, with the chancla, it's just like you cannot throw it. It's like, you know what? Like sometimes you cannot do, because you don't want your kid to burn their hand, right? It's just like, you're not going to say, it's like, okay, honey, it's like, are you sure you want to stick your hand in there? It's like, okay, well, if you really want to, it's like, you just put your hand there, right? It's like, sometimes it does take a little slap in the hand, just being like, hey, you don't touch that. No, you not put the fork in the socket. It's like, 'cause you don't want them to die. So it's like, I guess, like, job number one is like, make sure that your kids don't die. Yeah. Job number two is like, make sure that don't die eternally in hell, and then you did your job. So it's like understanding that they're not going to have the intellectual capacity in the beginning to actually understand and reason with you. So it doesn't matter how many times you kind of like kneel in front of them and to get at their level or whatever. And I know that I am so going against the modern grain on this one, but you as a parent are a reflection of God's fatherhood as well. So then it's okay for your kids to look up to you. Like, please, for the love of God, like, our kids need someone to look up to. And if they don't look up to you, then they're gonna look up to somebody else. So you wanna make sure that it is you so. That's one, right? So you are the one that sets the boundaries. You are the one that speaks with authority, like being consistent, like making sure that there's no once you say no, that your no is no, that your yes is yes, because then otherwise, like, it's if you continuously flip flop depending on the mood of your kid, it's just like they're smart.
Well, if you, like you said, if you continually flip flop according to whatever mood or it could be your kid could be teething, they could have had a bad day. I mean, whatever it is, like if you are continuing to flip flop, no chancla pun intended there. If you're continuing to, parent according to whatever mood your kid is in, then that's the perspective that's how they're gonna perceive the Lord. And we don't want our kids to think that the Lord flip flops on what He says. We need to be steady.
And that brings up a very good point, right? So there's nothing that happens in your kid's life that merits a tantrum, right? It's like as parents, it's like, it's like he's tired, that's why he's throwing a tantrum. It's like, nope, being tired, being hungry, like none of those are reasons for your kids to throw tantrums. And I think if we start normalizing bad behavior, guess what? Like they're gonna hit 7, 8, and then the parents are. That's when they realize that their kids are not enjoyable to be around. It's just like, well, too late. You allowed it. Why? Because for their whole life, you've been excusing bad behavior. Now, the thing is that we continue to excuse bad behavior because we associate it with malice, right? So it's just like, oh, my kid is hungry, so it's okay. Like it's not his fault. It's like, no. That this is where you as parent have to teach them self-possession. It's like, I understand that you're hungry, but it doesn't matter how hungry you are. This is not appropriate behavior, right? And if it needs to be, if there needs to be correction, for example, like whether it's whatever mode of correction you want to use, like whether it's like putting them in the corner or whatever it is, that like taking something away, like that's secondary. Like the main thing is that you do not negotiate with terrorists. That's the ongoing joke with my wife and myself, is like, we do not negotiate with terrorists, right? So like if there's bad behaviors, like I don't care what happens. Like we tell them, it's like, I don't care what happened. It's like, this behavior is not acceptable. It's like, well, but so and so, she hit me. It's like, it doesn't matter. Like her hitting you does not mean or excuse you for you hitting back. Does that make sense?
Of course it makes sense. As an adult, if I tried to use that, and I mean, if for me to tell, I mean, if I said, so-and-so, took that promotion out from under me, and so now I get to meet him in the parking lot after work and show him who's boss. I mean, it's like, that's not how, just because somebody does something to you doesn't give you the excuse to act like a maniac. And so we have to teach our children that, and we have to live by that. But you said something the other day on the same line of what you're talking about. You're talking about how parents will say, well, my child is acting like this because they're hungry, they're tired, they just went to the doctor, and or they have a fever. I mean, maybe sickness is a bad example, but like if they're grumpy for whatever reason and we're excusing the behavior because you said the other day when we were talking, well, they don't know any better. Like they don't know any better. They're 2 years old. They're 3 years old. They don't have the reason and the capacity. Their prefrontal, this is the thing, this is the hot thing that I've heard all over every sort of like gentle parenting and like whatever, conscious parenting is the other word. They don't have the prefrontal cortex that tells them like, hey, I'm going to get fed in a little while. So this is how I'm going to express myself, by like flipping myself upside down. What did you say the other day? Oh, when you said in response to the parents, you say they don't know any better, that's why they act like this. Do you remember what you said? You were like, it's your job to teach them to know better.
Yeah, for sure. And the thing is that look at other cultures, okay? And to me, it's just like whenever you look at other cultures and you look at their 2-year-old, 3-year-olds, and they're not behaving like this. It's like, don't tell me that, it's like, oh no, it's like, we've evolved, we've progressed so much in our culture that, like our kids are just not capable of, having self-possession, right? And that's the thing, is like, it is your job to teach them. It is your job to teach them. The thing is that we focus so much on the self-knowledge, so we try to go like the psychology route. It's like, oh, you're feeling like this because of that or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then you have these whole conversations. And you know what? Like, have at it. Like, have the conversations too. But you have to teach them self-possession too. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I think that's where the balance is. It's just like, the authority really comes with like, hey, I understand, and you mentioned sickness being a bad example. It's like, no. Even in sickness, like with my kids, it's just like, I understand that you don't feel that you don't feel good, but that is not the way to talk. It's like I understand that you're that your tummy aches, but that's not the right mood, right? Even when they hurt themselves or whatever, like they fall, and if they start going into a tantrum, it's like I straight up tell them, like, I understand that you're hurting, and you can cry, but you do not have to be like you don't have to be in a bad mood, right? And it's like, cry, go at it. It's like you were feeling pain and it's okay. It's like, but it's no excuse to be in a bad mood. Like, that's the thing. It's like, because I want to love my kids, because I want to be able to spend time with them and enjoy my time with them. Like, if I don't teach this, then I'm not gonna want to be with them, because they're gonna pick up on this. Like, whether it's just like it was like, yeah, right now it's just because they scraped their knee. It was like, but what happens tomorrow? Because because they didn't get the toy they wanted, because they didn't get the food that they wanted, or because they got a little bit too much or whatever, or because homework. And give me any excuse, and then they're just gonna go down down the hole because of it. And I will say, this shows up as adults, because how many people do we not know that get, we even have like now the words like hangry, right? It's just because it's like, I'm hungry, so it's like, because I'm hungry, then I can be upset. I'm tired, so I can be upset. Just like, so don't tell me it stops just because you came into the age of reason, and then all of a sudden, like, now you can reason it out, and then it goes away. It doesn't.
So you're talking about, essentially, I think you're describing what would be like an adult tantrum. Yep. So many years ago when I was working in HR, like Toby Flenderson style, we had this like health initiative where we were trying to put like healthy things in the vending machine. And I'll never until the day I die, and I really pray and I hope, this is the only time I've ever, well, I know she's probably not listening, but one time when we switched these, I'm not going to say a name, but we switched healthy foods in the vending machine and healthy drinks too. So we took out all the like sodas, diet sodas, all that stuff, right? And people like really love their sodies. And so I came off the elevator, and we had worked pretty hard for this initiative. I came off the elevator, and I'm feeling good about myself. We worked hard. Our bosses were happy with us, and the only way I can describe the way this person looked is if you've ever seen like a matador, and like like a bull coming at him. And I'm thinking, and this person is very tiny, but they had a lot of rage, and I'm like, what's going on? Hey, how's it going? Did you take my sodas out? I was like, I'm sorry, what? Like, it didn't even, she was screaming. And I was like, we switched some healthier alternatives. You can't take my sodas. And I was like, there has to be a camera. There has to be a camera. It's a hidden camera situation. There's just no way. And I was like, well, it's the company's property. They could, they could sell whatever they want on here. And she was like, you have no right. And so that's what you're talking about. If we're saying, hey, they're hungry, or we took away their favorite drink or whatever, and they're throwing a tantrum, but when they're adults, they won't do it anymore because their brain needs to. I'm here to tell you firsthand, folks, I've seen many adults throw tantrums. They may not have been screaming, but we got to put the work in as soon as humanly possible to teach them, like Mauricio says, if you love your kids. If you love your kids, you have to put the work in now, when it's the most difficult, when it's the most, like, it tests you the most. It pushes your patience. It pushes all your boundaries totally out of your comfort zone as someone who's in the thick of it right now. If you love your children, you have to teach them not to be the person everybody doesn't like as adults. We'll be right back. We're after a short break. You're listening to The Quest. I'm your Monday, Thursday host, Sarah Soto. I'm here with Mauricio Romero, talking all things parenting with love and authority. We will be right back.
This is Franciscan Media's Saint of the Day for September 19th. Today we celebrate Saint Januarius. Little is known for certain about Januarius, but one story persists. Popular for centuries, it is the belief that the saint's blood, carefully kept in a container in the Naples Cathedral, liquefies on 3 specific dates every year, including this date. Januarius served as the Bishop of Benevento, Italy, during the persecution of the Christians ordered by the Emperor Diocletian. In his capacity as bishop, he went to visit several Christian prisoners, was himself arrested, and was ultimately thrown to the wild beasts in the amphitheater. After the animals failed to attack him, he was beheaded around the year 305. The phenomenon of Januarius's blood liquefying is best seen as an alleged miracle rather than a confirmed one. But it certainly has been thoroughly investigated, and there is no question that what is claimed to happen has indeed happened time and time again, usually without fail. The phenomenon eludes natural explanation, but it is the reason Januarius is considered the patron of blood banks, the city of Naples, as well as the Neapolitan diaspora. There's more about the saints along with inspiration and Catholic resources at our website, saintoftheday.org. From Franciscan Media, this has been Saint of the Day.
This is The Quest from the studios of the Guadalupe Radio Network. Share the show with a friend. You can find us on social media. Want to listen again? We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you enjoy listening to podcasts.
Hey y'all, welcome back to The Quest. I'm here with Mauricio Romero. We're talking about parenting with authority and love, not just one or the other. Well, there's a lot of pressure out there, a lot of different parenting styles, some way too harsh and some not harsh at all. Listen, I've got a very loyal, well, we have all of our listeners are very loyal at Guadalupe Radio Network, but I have one in particular, well, a few in particular, but one is my former youth, when I was a youth minister in the Archdiocese of San Antonio, and she always listens to the show, and I so appreciate that. And we're talking about more Mexican style parenting, where there's a house shoe involved, and it flies at you when you're not even when you're doing something wrong, when you have the look on your face like you're thinking about doing something wrong. And so she shot me a message, and she said sometimes that kind of parenting is necessary. Sometimes chanclas or house shoes have to fly. And I asked her, I said, well, when have you ever needed a chancla thrown at you? And she asked her mother. And I just have to share with you that it's when she talks back. You need a chancla in your direction just to right your course, not to hurt you. No, I mean, sometimes you need, but in that all being said, you need the authority, right? Your children do need to look up to you. You are a reflection for them. You are a model for what God the Father's love is for them. And so you absolutely need authority. Our Lord obviously has and exercises his authority with us. And so we need to exercise our authority with our children, but our Lord is also, he is love. He is love. And so what does that mean, Mauricio, for you and your parenting journey that you're continuing on? How do you talked about the sort of authoritative, like setting them right on the right course and growing in virtue yourself, and then seeing like, wow, this really annoys me about my kid. They probably learned that from me. So I need to correct, my actions, but I also need to help them understand that tantrums are bad behavior. And just because for some reason we're in America, we feel like we can excuse it away. But that's not an excuse, right? Being hungry, angry, frustrated, tired, lonely, bored, whatever it is, none of those are reasons to behave that way. And actually, before I toss it over to you, I was reading an article about, I don't think you're supposed to say Eskimos, and Inuit, right? The Inuit children don't throw tantrums. And it's basically saying that Inuit parents all collectively believe and understand and live as they actually execute this belief, which is that uncontrolled anger is childish. And so like when you can't like get it together, like an adult would never be seen in the Inuit culture as throwing or like stamping their feet, right, screaming and becoming unglued, unhinged. Because that's not something that is acceptable behavior for someone who's in control of their emotions. And so that's how they model it for their children. And turns out their children learn how not to lose complete control of their emotions when they don't have what they want.
Yeah, and right now, I mean, just look at the culture today. Go into TikTok or YouTube for more than 5 seconds, and you're gonna see adult children, like adults like behaving like children. But I don't wanna sidetrack on that one, go on a tangent. But I do want to say this: it's not that complicated. Like once you figure out that it's like, hey, it's like if you really want to love your kids, then you do what God does, right? And He respects our freedom, right? Like the highest sign of, or one of the highest signs of love, outside of Christ on the cross, it's gonna be that God Himself will not take away the freedom that He has given you. So then it's like, okay, so then should I let my kid do whatever he wants? It's like, nope, because God Himself also set rules, right? So so we have and if we do not want to live according to these rules, then there are consequences. The ultimate consequence would be like going to hell, right? Like that's the ultimate bad consequence of rejecting God's plan. So then, if you want to be a good parent, set rules. It's okay to set rules, and just follow through. Make sure that the laws that you put in place in your home, that they're reasonable, and if you are consistent yourself, I can guarantee you that you will start to become less and less frustrated with the situation, because what happens is just, I'll give you a quick example. So one of my kids is just so slow at eating, like during dinner, and she takes so long. So then I just, one day I just says like, okay, new rule for you. If you are the last one to finish eating, no TV. And she hasn't been. Like she was twice, like she's testing me, right? It's like twice she was the last one, and she's like, Dad, but it was only for a few seconds. Like, it doesn't matter. And literally it was like 2 seconds difference. It's like, it doesn't matter, you're the last one, like no TV. And I just had to follow through a couple of times, and then the behavior changed. And it's just like, and was I frustrated? No. Was she frustrated? Oh, you better believe it. So it's not like I'm punishing her. It's just like she's punishing herself, because that's what happens with God in the Old Testament. It's like He's not the one doing the punishment. He just he set the rules, and then He just allows the consequences to happen. So I set the rules, like everybody knows them, so then I just allow the consequences to happen, and I'm the one that's enforcing them. And that's it. If you want to love your kids, just give them the freedom, but true freedom, because true freedom requires you to set those rules in your home. If you do not want to set your rules, then guess what? You're not following God's example, because we're called to order things according to God's plan. So put a plan together. You as parents, like come together, figure out a plan. I would recommend that you look into following God's biblical way of parenting. But the main thing is just follow through. But love without boundaries, love without rules, it's not love, because you're not even giving them the choice to choose, right? If you take away the choice to choose, if you take away their freedom to choose, then by allowing them to do whatever they want, then you're not really loving them. You're not following God's example.
Yeah, I mean it's easier said than done, but it's what's asked of us, what I mean is that, like,
it's simple.
Yeah, well, yeah, it is simple, but yeah, it is hard. It's very hard. And I'll say this as we close out the show here. I had a conversation with your wife recently, and we were really on the same page about how the Lord gives us rules, right? You're talking about, like, He gives us the Decalogue, right? We have the commandments. We know what's asked of us. It's written on our hearts. And that being said, that's enough. Like, it's enough rules. And so if I'm constantly following my toddler around, saying no 6,700 times a day, don't touch this, don't do that, don't take the pots out of the drawer, because then I'll have to put the pots back, and that creates double work for me, and I don't want to do that. It's not really a him problem, like like kids, you have in that freedom, right, that they have to explore and figure out the world. I'm not saying let them smear the dinner like all over the walls, but they
Oh, you can let them take out the pants. They just have to put it back. It's oh, but they're only a year and a half or two. It's like it doesn't matter. Let them put it back. If they want to smear the food, it's like okay, there are consequences for that too. So it's just let them live out the consequences of their actions in a controlled environment at home where you love them and you're trying to keep them safe and lead them to holiness.
Yeah. There's like my son likes to take clothes out of his drawer, his little baby drawer, right? And he puts them back. He doesn't put them back nicely and neatly, but he puts them back. And I think, but that's the thing, right? That's the thing that we wrestle with. This like everything's got to be perfect. It can kill you. It can slowly eat away at you when you realize like that, because then you're screaming at your kid and telling them not to touch anything, so they don't want to be involved in any of the processes, and they don't learn how to pick up after themselves, and they're going to not do it perfectly for many, many, many years. And so letting go, I think, of control, the need to control absolutely everything is what will put you in a better disposition, I think, to parent with love and to parent with authority and the biblical method of parenting. Go Old Testament on your children, but also New Testament. As always, thank you, Mauricio, for coming on the show today. It's been a great joy to talk with you and to recognize we're not perfect. We all are learning, and but that we're called to help our children get to heaven, and that's difficult. But it's worth it. It's worth it. It's worth it. It's difficult, but it's worth it. As always, thanks for listening. I'm your Monday, Thursday host of The Quest here on the Guadalupe Radio Network. Thanks for tuning in. Shoot us a question at thequest@grnonline.com. Otherwise, you can find this episode and all of them wherever you stream podcasts. God bless you. Thanks for listening.